Well, to Montreal now, where the Prime Minister earlier this morning defended his government's spending in defense. Canada, just one of 8 NATO countries that is failing to meet the alliance's 2% of GDP contribution. But Justin Trudeau says his government has been moving to bump up that number since first being elected.
When my progressive Liberal government took office in 2015, the previous Conservative government had dropped investments in defense to below 1% of our GDP. They were very good with photo ops and waving the flags. They were not so good in making necessary investments. We've made sure that our investments are as concrete as possible and contributing to the capacity of Canadians to continue to be involved and leading in so many different NATO aspects. We have to do more, and we are doing more.
Now, the Trudeau Liberals have been forced to address their defense investments in recent days as 2 U.S. politicians singled out Canada for being laggards within NATO commitments. One comment made in Montreal at the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, where the Prime Minister was today. The other made at the Halifax International Security Forum, where I talked to the Defense Minister about the criticisms. Minister, thank you for the time.
Always a pleasure, Michael.
Listen, I want to begin with Mike Turner, U.S. representative who is, as you know, in Montreal right now, taking part in the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. And in Montreal, he made some fairly disparaging comments about the Prime Minister, describing the Prime Minister's defense decisions and policies as an example of arrogance. And he also went on to say that countries that don't meet NATO commitments should be facing consequences. I'm wondering what your reaction to that is, and whether or not Canada has essentially alienated our closest ally by taking too long to invest in defense.
I would like not to put too much stock. I don't know that individual, and everybody's entitled to an opinion. But I've been engaged with the United States for a very long time. We work very closely with the current administration, and the Secretary of Defense is a friend and a colleague that we've been working on. And here in Halifax, I've had the opportunity to meet with a very senior delegation of congressional representatives from the United States and very senior senators. We've been able to have very good and frank conversations, and they're also expressing concern about Canada's burden sharing in both continental defense between Canada and the United States and in fulfillment of our other obligations to NATO and in the Indo-Pacific. I've been able to assure them directly. Canada understands its obligations. We have made a commitment to meet the spending threshold and the commitment of NATO. But even beyond that, the conversation has to go beyond just conversation about how much money needs to be spent. They're pushing on an open door. The answer is yes. We know how much we've got to spend. But the conversation now has to evolve into what are we spending it on? What capabilities do we have to acquire? How do we make sure that we do that in an alignment with our closest allies? That work is taking place, and I would invite that representative, to take a look at the work we're doing, for example, in NORAD modernization. It's an enormous commitment of both our countries, the United States and Canada, together to work collaboratively, to invest in new technologies, to create new capabilities that are absolutely essential in the defense of our continent. There's also, I think, an important acknowledgement that much of the work that we have to do in defense requires the acquisition of capabilities for which we have to work with the United States. I've been meeting with congressional leaders here and with the existing administration. I anticipate I'll be meeting with the incoming administration on how we can work better together to get that job done. Canada understands the need to invest in defense. Canadians understand the need to invest in defense. We are going to do that, but we want to make sure that we get good value for those investments.
Yeah, making sure you get value, trying to decide where the dollars go to. So I'm wondering what your behind-the-door conversations were like with Senator Tim Reich, because here he is in Halifax saying to an open plenary that Donald Trump would find it laughable, would guffaw at the timeline this country has set for meeting the NATO targets. Did you respond to that to him in any way?
Senator Reich is frankly, he's somebody that we worked with for a very long time. He understands Canada's relationship with the United States. He's a border senator himself. He understands the value of that relationship. I took from the senator's remarks that he was just trying to continue to encourage us to do what is required, and I was able to assure him we've heard that. I came before this forum last year. And I made a very conscious decision to speak to our American friends and all of our international partners and to Canadians in acknowledging we needed to do more, that we needed to spend more, we needed to acquire new capabilities. You know, we've come forward with our new defense policy, our spring budget. We came forward with a plan with timelines. Those timelines are predicated on how long it takes to build the ships and the submarines, to buy and acquire the planes, to train personnel to be sailors and marine techs and pilots and aircraft maintenance crews. All of that work takes time and investment of large numbers of dollars. I've asked and I want to accelerate that. We want to deliver on that faster because the world that we're living in requires that we be ready sooner. So I've gone to our allies, and particularly the United States, and like, work with me, help us here. I want to work with industry as well, and I've had a number of meetings, you know, with large and small military industrial industries. How can we do business better together to deliver on those promises? So
do you have a sense that the timelines will be shortened, the fact that you can deliver faster than the deadline originally set by your policy?
I think with the help of industry, with the help of our American partners who are our closest ally, even with the help of other international partners such as Germany and Norway and Korea and Sweden, we've been having conversations with those countries and with their industries. We know that we have a strong sense of urgency on what needs to be done. We think it can be done better, more efficiently, and produce a better result for Canadians and our national defense by doing it more collaboratively. I believe that the current world environment demands that we accelerate the delivery of those capabilities as quickly as possible, and I believe there's real opportunity to do that. Frankly, I think it's important to think of the dollars that Canada will invest in our national defense and in global security. Creates a real opportunity for us to build stronger partnerships with industry, stronger partnerships with our allies, and demonstrate, as Canada always has, that we are committed to those alliances, and Canada always steps up to do its part.
You know, I've been listening to you throughout this weekend here in Halifax, and it is clear that you have a sense of urgency about trying to deliver your Arctic strategy on equipment. Is that urgency, that sense of it, shared by your government, though? Is that shared by the Prime Minister?
Yes, it is. And it's shared certainly with my Prime Minister, certainly with my government, but most importantly, I think it's now becoming increasingly shared by Canadians who understand the environment, understand this responsibility, and I've been very encouraged by the strong support we're receiving right across this country. And it's not political. It's bipartisan. It's more of a national consensus that we need to do more. I want to be really clear. The need to spend more is not in response to the critics. Frankly, there are always critics. It's in response to our national interest. The investment that we need to make in our security is directly tied to our future prosperity. And so I have to feel a sense of urgency because the world is changing and we are responding to that new environment. But it's also because I want to be able to assure our future prosperity. So these are investments in Canada's future. I think Canadians understand that, and I believe there's a strong consensus in this country. It's the right thing to do, and we're going to put our head down and get it done.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you use the word nonpartisan, because I think about the timeline. Whenever it may be, within the calendar year, there will be an election. Earlier, sooner, later, don't know. Who will be in government, we don't know. But how do you ensure that the policies that you put in place today, the priorities that you put in place today for national defense actually has legacy beyond the year that remains for your government?
Well, and first of all, for my government, we are absolutely and unwaveringly committed to getting this job done. But it's one of the reasons that I've tried very hard over the last year and a half to have a conversation with Canadians, have a conversations with our allies, even open us up to a certain amount of criticism, because the critics will always rise to the bait. When you say you need to do better, out they come. But the important conversation was with Canadians. It was with them talking not just about the need to spend more money, but what we needed to spend it on and why. In our defense policy update that we released in April, we've tried to tell Canada's story. We tried to talk about our responsibility to our country, to our continent, to our north, to the Arctic, to the people that live there, to all Canadians. I believe that story has resonated with Canadians, and I believe that there's a growing appreciation for the need to do more. And that's the thing that gives me hope and confidence for the future. Because no future government can ignore the overwhelming consensus and will of Canadian people. And so if Canadians think this is the right thing to do, any future government, mine or another, will have to deliver on what Canadians require of us.
Minister Bill Blair, thank you.
Always a problem, but thanks, Mike.
Thank you.